Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and the Pokemon TCG meta is, in my opinion, really cool, but there are only so many decks that are really the top tier. And so, say, like the top 10 decks get played a lot, and the other decks get pushed to the side, and some people get bored of the top decks pretty easily and want to play something different, some rogue decks. Rogue decks don't really have a firm definition, so if you don't consider these rogue decks, or if there are decks that are better than these that you do consider rogue decks, then feel free to leave those in the comments because everyone has a bit of a different definition. But these are what I consider rogue decks and some of the best and most fun. Rogue decks kind of need to be fun. If you have a deck that's bad and also not fun, then no one's going to play it, right? The only reason you'd play it is in that case to like try something else, but there's not really a reason to do it. These decks, though, I think are all really fun. They're not really in any particular order, but I think they're all decent, and you can definitely be in games, though I will talk about their downsides as well. But the first deck we have here is the Flareon deck. This deck is not super strong. It's actually not, in my opinion, the most interesting. There are different ways to play it, though, and that's the cool part about it. The deck focuses around Flareon EX, though it is an evolution, so you can mix and match other evolutions in, and you certainly will do some, though it does depend how much you want to go into that. But you have Burning Charge to do 130 for 2 and accelerate to your Pokemon, and to one of your Pokemon, and then you have Carnelian, which does 280 for Fire, Water, Lightning, and then cannot attack back-to-back turns, which, yeah, you could use like Switch or Prime Catcher to do that, but, that's not really a focus of it. And it is a Terra Pokemon. That means you can use the Terra support stuff like Briar, Area Zero Under that, so you can play Sparkling Crystal, and then you can use the Noctowl engine. It's a Noctowl engine based deck. It's obviously not the best. Currently, according to Limitless, the top deck is wow, the top deck's Terra Box, just slightly above Dragapult. Terra Box is a base. It is a basic built, based deck with obviously Noctowl, but it plays a bunch of basic Terra Pokemon, which is different than the Evolution deck, which plays a bunch of Stage One Terras. I mean, the Evolution EXs are all Stage One Terras. You can play these single prize evolutions as well. I'm not super familiar with all of them. There's a lot of them. Most of them are pretty bad. Jolteon here, for example, is decent, really good in some scenarios, and there's a bunch of other ones you could play as well, which makes them fun. Sylveon EX is kind of cool. Its first attack's pretty boring, but it can one-shot Dragapult EX and some other things using weakness with Lily's Clefairy EX, which is still a strong card you want to play here most likely. And then you have Angelite here, which does for Water, Lightning, Psychic. Choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and you shuffle those Pokemon and all cards attached to them into your opponent's deck. But this attack cannot be used back-to-back turns. It's a really weird attack. But it can be really strong or kind of useless. It's an attack that doesn't take prizes, that's really expensive, but it is really interesting. EVEX itself can also attack. The single prize EV from from Surging Sparks. Oh yeah, also from Prismatic Evolutions can evolve instantly, essentially, if it's in the active spot, which is really nice. And then you have Fan Rotom, which is really good for the deck. Overall, the deck's pretty fun. I'd recommend it. I played it some pre-rotation. It's not the strongest, but Flareon EX it does good damage and has solid HP. It's certainly not a particularly weak Pokemon. It's like middle range. It's kind of strong, right? 280 is a decent number to be hitting. You're not really taking one shots, which is the issue, and not super easy to set up, but it's a decent deck. You can use Glass Trumpet as well. And it's also really the only deck that I've seen play Terra Orb much. You can see it in like a Dragapult. I guess I've seen it there as well, but it's pretty underwhelming in other decks. But if you want to play Terra Orb and get good value out of it, this is a great deck because EVEX is a basic, which is a pre-evolution that's a Terra. Also, EVX is really good for the deck because you really want a basic Terra Pokemon to be able to use your Noctowls and things like that. So that's a really cool part of it. Overall, the deck's pretty fun. And if you're looking for something a little better, I will say probably just play Terra Box, but this deck isn't like a drastic step behind it, and it's a really fun deck as well, depending what you're looking for. If you're looking for a Stage 1 deck, the better one, like I'd say Arcaludon is better, but it's not like this deck's terrible, and this is probably, and then Golden I guess, is also a better Stage 1 deck, but I'd say this might be the third best Stage 1 deck. You have Enzoroark. I would say this is better than Enzoroark. I don't think Enzoroark is a rogue deck, and I also don't think it's super great. But yeah, Flareon is cool. It got a bit of hype before the format, but it's not super strong, but it's cool. The next deck we have here is the Hops deck. This one I was not going to consider a rogue deck because, you can look at it, right? It's like played a bunch, but it's mostly like a lot of us played with our Calodon, and that kind of makes sense. This deck plays like a rogue deck. It plays, not doing the most damage, but kind of using like spread damage to get knockouts. Not like Dragon Ball, where you're doing 200 damage to the active, but it's a deck where you do, you're attacking with like one energy on a basic, or maybe three, no energy on a basic with Hop's Ash and the Hop's Choice Band. And the Hop stuff itself has been talked about a lot. Hop's Kramer's a cool card, but it's not super strong in terms of damage output, but it is a really cool card. Then you have the Monkey Dory, and you have that as like a really substantial part of the deck to move damage and kind of like heal up. It's a really interesting feel that you don't really get in any other deck. And if you're someone who wants to play rogue decks, this is a deck I'd recommend. Again, I don't know if most people consider a rogue deck, but I do, based on its playstyle. It just really feels pretty similar to those. You can also play decks with like Frostlass. This deck called Frostlass Monkey Dory. I actually don't know what's in this deck. This one plays Badoo. This one does not play Hop Sasha and Yax, but it's a pretty similar feel outside of it, in my opinion. You're focusing a lot on Monkey Dory, moving energies around. We see Clam to Snowy Mountain, which is a really cool card, but you can play the Hop stuff. And then I wonder if all these decks are pretty similar. You can play with this Spathra as well. I've seen that deck a little, and I've seen Frostlass with Hop Sasha and Yax. You can kind of mix and match these and make it more rogue or less rogue and more to your style with whatever you want. You can play with a new Maractus, which is cool, I guess. I've played with it a little bit and seen it a little bit, and it hasn't seemed super strong. It's actually seemed pretty weak. The card itself, if you look at it, you're like, this card just seems bad, and it doesn't seem super strong from me playing with it so far, but it is kind of cool. Overall, there's a bunch of different basic attacking options. If you're looking for like a spread slash poke based basic deck, this is a really, really fun option. But the next ones are getting, in my opinion, a little more rogue. I don't know. This one's Slowking. Slowking is a single prize deck, one of, I'd say, the top two single prize decks, which are also pretty crazy and also pretty inconsistent. Slowking, if it wasn't inconsistent, it would be the best deck in the game. It can pretty much, well, it can one-shot everything using Annihilate. What you do is you copy the top card of your deck by discarding it, then use its attack. If it's assuming it's a single prizer slash non-rule box switch, there are still a lot of really good attacks. They're either really expensive or in stage twos, but you'll see that they are cards that are definitely quite strong, and you don't need to worry about them being stage twos or really expensive. You do need to get them on the top of your deck, which is kind of awkward. There are ways to do that. The Academy at Night is the main one. Say for Maniac's Code Breaking. I honestly don't think the support is super great. I don't play much Goldengo, but I played Goldengo some really recently, and I played it, and the supporter felt pretty weak in my opinion. But anyways, you can use that to get cards in the top, and it's a solid supporter for, like, you can draw into the two cards, so it can lead to these like really big combo returns. And it plays the Zato engine. I know this one's a fan favorite, and then it plays Kyurem. In some ways, this deck's pretty similar to Regidrago V-Star. You either have big active knockout attacks, you have the Conkeldurr, the Annihilate, or the Regigigas, which are all kind of the same thing, just used in different circumstances to do massive active damage. Then you have the Kyurem to do insane spread damage. Kyurem is like kind of broken now if you can attack with it a lot. You can't attack with it that much, being completely honest, but you can use it some. Kyurem is a really, really interesting attacker, which just does 110 to 3 year points Pokemon. Keep in mind, this really targets down Pokemon with, I mean, not super low HP, but moderately low HP on the bench, which cannot be stopped right now. Well, it can be stopped by Rabsco, which will also stop Dragon Ball. I didn't really mention that. Dragon Ball's pretty bad for a lot of these decks. But anyways, you have the Kyurem, which can hit your opponent's bench and quite often take through prizes. But with the next set, Destined Rivals, we will be getting the Shaman, which will stop that. I don't know exactly how good the Shaman will be, but I assume it'll be quite good, or at least played a lot. And so the Kyurem will be stopped by that. So right now, if you want to play the Kyurem, play it right now. This is the best time to do so. And you can copy it. It's kind of awkward, but it is doable. And when you do it, if you attack with Kyurem twice, there's a good chance you'll just kind of win. So this deck's really fun. I've talked about it some before, and it's really cool. Then we have the next deck, which is Feraligatr. Feraligatr is a deck I've talked about even more than Slowking or any of these decks, I think. And it has a bunch of different things going on. Not going to get into the details too much here, but you can do big damage. You can do control options, either trapping or wall stalling, using Mimikyu. I've seen lists with my low deck. As I said, Dragapult's like decent and kind of scary, but I still wouldn't play my low deck EX. I don't think it's super good. That is a deck I was considering including in this video, but I don't think it's super great. I think it's okay. I mean, I think it's an all right deck. Good enough to be in this video, but it's kind of boring. So or it's actually very boring, so I didn't include it. But Feraligatr can play that if you want. There are different walling options, but Mimikyu was the main one, and Luxurious Cape on Mimikyu is the it's the best wall in the game in my opinion. I mean, obviously it depends on the matchup, but I think Mimikyu is really great and its low HP is an issue, but you can overcome that with Luxurious Cape, and ways of getting through it might not trigger Luxurious Cape. They'll have to go through the damage, but normally you give them extra prize, and Luxurious Cape says that you give them an extra prize when knocked out from damage, but if they're knocking out through some other way like poison or instant knockouts aren't super common, but they could happen. But it's just a really, really good Pokemon. And you have Relicanth. Relicanth allows you to copy previous evolution attacks, which is really, really fun. And then you have Monkey Dory, which is a cool card as well. We've talked about it a lot. I don't think it's broken, but I think it's a decent card, and it certainly has a nice place within this deck. But overall, the deck is pretty fun. I'd actually make a few changes and actually drop a Darkness here, certainly, but the deck is a really, really interesting deck. The next deck, the last one we have here, is Mamoswine EX. Mamoswine EX, I've said a lot of bad things about this deck. It's not super strong. I've now played against it once or twice, and I can confirm it's not super strong, but it's really fun. You use your ability to get a bunch of stage 2s into play. You do a bunch of damage. Once you have a bunch of stage 2s in play, you have so much HP, you can play Rock Chestplate to have even more HP, essentially. And you can use Blaziken EX or Garganackle. These are both cool cards. They're kind of the same. They accelerate energy. They're not super strong energy acceleration, but they're really fun cards. Blaziken EX is a new card, which we've been waiting for a while, but it is really fun. I guess I haven't actually played with it yet, but it looks really fun. You can play Klinklang and Luxray, which are stage 2s, so you can instantly play onto your bench, and that's pretty cool. Luxray was played a while for countering some different things, including Lugia. That was the main thing it was countering, and it was played in that deck. Klinklang is, I think it's supposed to be like a counter to Chien-Pao, but I've only actually seen it in Mamoswine lists. But that can be played instantly. Some really fun Pokemon there. And just so many Pokemon you're getting into play. You're just doing a lot of playing Pokemon, literally the Pokemon themselves. They are all stage 2s, so you're just playing them and evolving them and doing all this stuff. It's really fun. But overall, tell me which of these decks is your favorite, and if there are any others that I don't have on this list. I guess Enzoroark EX, I think it's not really a rogue deck. It's played a lot, and it also, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like it to me. It feels kind of weak, which I guess is similar to a lot of the rogue decks, but it's also a deck that, let's see, you have, and Darmanitan doesn't quite feel like a rogue attacker, but it kind of does. And then Enzoroark EX just doesn't quite feel like it. I don't know. If you'd want to include that, I could see it. Also, what is this list? Like, what am I looking at here? I just opened up the first list I could see, and I don't know what's going on here. But anyways, that's a pretty cool deck. And they're like, you could look lower here on some of these extra rogue decks like Roaring Moon or Future Hands, but I don't know. They're pretty simple and straightforward, and they're like two prizes and stuff. They don't feel quite like it. I mentioned there is Pidgeot Control. I've not played this deck yet, but I think it's okay, and it seems kind of interesting. And Blissey, I did see Blissey as well. Blissey is kind of cool, and I guess I'll mention Ionos. Ionos, I think, is a rogue deck. Personally, I'd consider it that. Again, don't have a hard definition as to why, other than I think it's like it's weaker, but it's a pretty fun deck, I guess. I've seen it some. There's someone I know who likes to play Ionos a lot, so they played against me with it, and it seems cool enough, though it's not the strongest. But tell me what deck your favorite is, whether it's a rogue deck or not. There are a lot of really fun meta decks. But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all the good stuff. And as Osmond said, see you in the next video.